Till now, we have seen the outbreak of the First World War and all the causes that led right to it. Now, we have reviewed the various countries that were involved in the First World War. But today, we start discussing the course of the First World War. The war is already broken out, and now it's time to track the progress and the various events that happened during the duration of the war. So, let us start that by taking another look at the various countries involved in the war. So we have Western European powers like England and France. Then we have Central European powers, namely Germany, Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Italy. And finally, we have East European and Asian empires, such as the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. Now, moving on, we see the entry of powers like the United States of America and Japan as the war is progressing. So, as you must know, a battle is when two forces clash against each other in a single geographical region, whereas a war is when two sides are engaged in a series of direct conflicts which might take place over a long period of time, in which many battles can be fought in various regions of the world. So, when we are talking of the First World War, do you think that this war was fought in only one particular geographical region? As you must have guessed by now, that simply is not possible. The First World War was fought over an expansive region of the world, which comprises of the majority of the Eurasian landmass. So, for the ease of convenience and our understanding, the major fighting of the First World War took place on two significant fronts, the Western Front and the Eastern Front. Now, here are the maps which shows us these two fronts, and the lines you see, they showcase the front lines, which shows exactly between which regions the war was fought. And in these maps, you can see the various countries that were fighting on each front. Now, do you want to know what a war front is? War fronts are basically the main areas where all the major fighting of the war takes place. Even though many countries were involved in the war, the fighting does not go to each and every country. The fighting is often restricted to a particular region. And these regions are known as the war fronts, and they are demarcated by front lines, which we just saw. Therefore, all the military operations and the fighting takes place within the fronts. Now, this includes all the insurgencies, counter-insurgencies, and various forms of invasions and attacks which take place during the war. Now, the war fronts are actually geopolitical in nature, which means that they comprise of the countries which fall within these regions, as well as the various colonial interests of the various countries that are involved in the war. Now, do you want to see which countries are fighting on which front? Let us have a look at that. Starting off with the Western Front, we have Germany, a central power, fighting against the Allied powers, namely France, British Empire or the Great Britain, and USA, which is on the western side of the Atlantic Ocean. So we see that Germany is the exclusive central power fighting on the Western Front. Now, can you answer this question? Which central power fought on the Western Front? Was it Austria-Hungary? Was it Bulgaria? Was it Germany? Or was it Italy? The correct answer is Germany. Now, moving on to the Eastern Front, we have the central powers on one side, namely Germany, Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Ottoman Turkey. So we have Germany over here, the Austro-Hungarian Empire over here, and the Ottoman Empire over here, making a sort of a central blockade against the Allied powers, namely Russia, the British Empire, and Japan, which is on the far east. So we see that the British Empire is not actively involved in the Eastern Front as England, but it's fighting through its various colonies in the East. Whereas we see that Germany, due to its strategic position in Central Europe, is able to fight on both fronts, Western and Eastern. So in this video we saw how after the outbreak of the First World War, the fighting of the war was divided into two significant fronts, the Eastern and the Western Front. We saw the countries that were involved in the fighting taking place on these fronts, and we also saw which countries had strategic importance in each of the fronts. In the next video, we will start looking at the various fronts in detail.